In the Field updates on Market Journal are supported by the Nebraska Corn Board.
This past February was National Pesticide Safety Month, and it's a good reminder to think about safety around chemicals on the farming operation. To that point, we sat down with Extension Educator Amy Timmerman to talk about pesticide safety and why women in particular need to take a few extra precautions when it comes to their exposure and application.
So when we look at it with pesticides, it doesn't matter if it's a general use product you're able to go buy at Lowe's or Home Depot, or you have to go to your local co-op. All those products have labels on them that are giving us guidelines on how we're supposed to protect ourselves, and that's usually in the regards of public or personal protective equipment. As we look at pesticides as a whole, there's been a lot of news and media about different impacts of different pesticides on human health. As we dig into the research, there are over 43 different types of cancers that are associated with pesticide exposure for applicators, and those are all primarily focusing on our ag producers and the ag chemicals that we're using. As we transition looking at women's health, there isn't a lot of research on women and the impacts of pesticide exposure, especially when we look at the ag chemical side. Women are the minority of primary applicators when it comes to ag chemicals. That doesn't mean we don't have data, that just means we don't have a lot. And so we are still learning about some of the impacts of those pesticides on women's health. What do we know about women's health? We know breast cancer may be associated with pesticide exposure, but keep in mind when we look at breast cancer, there are so many multifactuals that impact it. Genetic deposition is one of those. The other ones are environmental, health impacts, obesity increases your chances of breast cancer and some other scenarios. We have seen historically that pesticides can impact female reproduction. And so we could go back into history and look at the insecticide DDT sprayed primarily in the 1960s to control mosquitoes, did great for controlling mosquitoes, but it was responsible for a lot of birth defects that we found out later down the line. And we do have some products on the market now if women are exposed during that pregnancy time that could cause birth defects, but we also see links to low birth weights or preterm labor associated with it. And then the other big complication is we have seen some products are actually interrupting that entire hormonal situation for women, and it's leading to some of the infertility issues that we see. But once again, we're not real clear on how much pesticide they need to be exposed to, what pesticides, and what time in your life. But we know we're seeing those correlations, and we're learning more every single day. So at the end of the day, what do? Read the label. I don't care if I am applying the most toxic ag pesticide in the planet, or if I'm applying weed and feed on my lawn. You need to read that label. That label is that link with that company to mitigate the risk. And when we look at our personal protective equipment, every label is going to tell you long sleeve shirt, long pants, shoes plus socks, and most likely gloves. What we're doing is we're trying to cover as much of our body as possible. And when we look at gloves, your hands touch everything, and then your hands touch every other place on your body. And so that's how we're going to move a lot of product around. So making sure we're using nice, good quality, chemical resistant gloves is your first line of defense. When we look at those labels, we're going to want to use gloves. Typically we're going to look at nitrile base, and we want at least 14 milliliters in thickness. Those are green gloves, and then in the women's world, for us females, those gloves do not fit well at all. They're big, they just don't work. So I like to look at the disposable gloves. I haven't found a disposable glove that is 14 mil thickness. The thickest I have found is a 12 millimeter thickness, 10, not 12, 10, and I just double layer. So I get that double layer protection. I'm getting closer to that 14. But here's a big kicker for any of you women who want to go out and find those gloves for yourself or for your husbands on your operation. You don't go to the pesticide section of your local farm store, Baumgart's or Tractor Supply to find them. You're not going to find them there. You're actually going to find those gloves in the mechanic section. And so they're designed originally for anybody working with transmission fluids, oils in general. They're chemical resistant. They are labeled for pesticide use. So you just have to go to a different section of your farm store to find them. You can buy them on Amazon or any of those online portals, but make sure you're finding nitrile and 10 milliliters in thickness. And then at the end of the day, make sure you wash your hands. Washing your hands, you know, we've learned a lot through COVID and trying to teach our kids how to wash their hands. Sing your ABCs twice, wash really thoroughly, get in between those fingers, and dry. And the other big trick I will always remind people, you want to wash your hands the minute you get done with that pesticide application, the minute you take those gloves off. If you need to use the restroom, make sure you wash very, very well before you use the bathroom, because that part of your body, when we look at our groin area, is very sensitive to pesticide absorption, is the highest. And so we really want to make sure those hands are clean before we use the restroom, so we reduce our risk of developing diseases and cancers later on in life. The biggest thing I always want to remind people, we all have a chance of getting sick, right? We don't know what's going to happen in our life. But with pesticides, we can take the steps to keep ourselves safe by looking at our personal protective equipment and reading that label and doing everything possible to keep myself safe. And in return, I keep my family safe at the same time.